Next up is going to be adding in a phone.
Turn Bluetooth on from your device in order to search. On your device, select the name that matches vehicle name on the screen.
Okay, so from here, all we're going to do is pop open the phone. You're going to go to Bluetooth, and you're just waiting for the Carnival to come up. There we go, and it's shown up. Pin, perfect. So we're going to pair. There we go. Do you want to allow contacts and favorites to sync up? This is not my car, so I'm going to say no to that one. And as you can see, fully connected there as well. You've got your contacts if you allow that to download. You've got your dial pad there as well.
Download was
Because the reason why it said that is because I selected no. But you can see the phone name, what your current connection status is, along with your battery level. And then you can press there if you wanted to do a little split screen here as well. Or just go for your full screen, and then you can see your available messages. Now, you could stop here and just use your phone for Bluetooth connection for making phone calls and then for playing media and things like that. Because if we go into media for a second, you can see there that we've got a podcast that's now playing. List to see whether or not you've got library there for music, podcast, radio, and things like that. So you could listen and stream your audio that way if you'd like to, but you've also got the flexibility of being able to set up Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. So let's connect through USB cable inside of this larger screen. So you do have Android Auto, Apple CarPlay support, but you have to use a cable that does have the little data icon there. So if the cable doesn't have the data icon, it's not a data transfer cable, it's strictly going to be a charge cable. And you want to insert it into the USB type A port. From there, you're just plugging yourself in. Perfect. Do you want to use Carnival while the CarPlay is, or do you want to use CarPlay, I should say, while the Carnival's locked? Yes, you want to do that. And as you can see there, connected, hit OK, and you've got CarPlay. So select through and boom, would you look at that? Fully connected. That is beautiful full screen. I love that. So this is going to be full screen Apple CarPlay. You can see your current time, connection level, which map was open last, which audio application was open last, which miscellaneous application was last opened. And then you can either press this to go into your icon view or back home, but you could also just swipe across in order to get to the icon view instead. You've got the map that was open last there. And then from there, some basic information, if you had podcast or music playing, and then if you had an upcoming event, that would show up there as well. From here, let's go Maps. So this is Apple Maps, but Apple Maps, nice and responsive, no pinch to zoom capability. You've got to go in and out this way to zoom. Look at your current location, 2D, 3D, etc. Zoom in and out. You can search for addresses, look at previous destinations. And then Google Maps is going to be the same thing. So Google Maps, no pinch to zoom capability, and it's got me, where? There we go, perfect. Takes a second to load up, and done. You can move around there. You could search for addresses. You can press there in order to do things for route options. So avoid highways, toll roads, and ferries. You can change out the map color, look at your satellite map, traffic, north up, so your basic heading, and then also just volume settings there too. Then Waze is the same idea, so it doesn't have pinch to zoom capability. You've got to go this way to zoom in and out if you're using Waze. You can also press this to let people know of police, crashes, traffic hazards, and things like that. You can search for addresses. And one nice thing about Apple CarPlay is that you can also push and hold the voice command prompt if you wanted to activate your Siri assistant. And that's the command prompt on the steering wheel, which is great. From there, not really a ton. Like you've got Live One, which is a radio app, Hoopla, which is a library app, VLC, which is a music app, YouTube Music. Like there are so many things that you can use through this screen. But the one thing that it doesn't support is video playback. So you can use YouTube Music and VLC for audio, but you can't watch video through this screen. There's no factory option to do it. You can push this button in order to get back to the home screen if you want to, but it's nice and simple. And then just launch back into CarPlay that way instead. It's great. And one nice thing is that on the phone, you can connect through to your settings. And then inside of your settings, you've got the option of going back into General, CarPlay, and then you're going to find your vehicle. You can forget it. You can allow CarPlay while the phone's locked, or you can customize. So let's say if you wanted to customize the screen so that your podcasts are first, also by your audiobooks, and then you wanted Google Maps up over there, you've got the flexibility to do that. You can also delete if you wanted to remove certain things from the vehicle. So if you're not a fan of using any of these apps, it fully removes them, but they are added on the bottom of the screen there, so you could add them back in if you want to. If you're not a fan of what layout you've set up, you can press the reset button on your phone, and that's going to reset it back to the factory default screen there instead. That's straightforward. Now, you do have the flexibility of easily turning this thing off if you want to, or as you saw earlier, you can push there in order to go back to that main Kia screen instead. If you go into setup now, the other one here is device connections. So moving through your active device connections, you can see there, currently connected over CarPlay. You can launch back for your Bluetooth prompts, system information in order to change the vehicle name. So if you didn't want it to be Carnival, you wanted it set up something different, you've got the flexibility to be able to change it out there. And then your projection settings, you can't adjust anything because you're currently connected over USB. So let's disconnect for a second, go into phone settings, Apple CarPlay. You can enable or disable CarPlay. So if you wanted to be charging up, but you don't want to launch CarPlay, you can disable CarPlay that way if you want to. Straightforward. Yes, let's enable. And then do you want to use split screen? So split screen is useful, and I want to show you how that looks. So let's just reconnect for CarPlay. It's going to take a second to launch in. There we go. Let's go back home, launch into CarPlay, and then you've got this little split screen instead. Where that comes into play is doing this. So you could go through some basic settings inside of your vehicle rather than having full screen CarPlay. So if you wanted to have CarPlay set up for phone calls and audio, but you wanted to have this set up for factory navigation, you can do a mix and match there as well. And it goes the opposite way. Like if you wanted your phone connected for your maps on your phone, but you wanted to use this in order to be able to do things like look at your weather, if you had your audio set up and things like that, you could have the audio running from the system itself rather than through your phone, which is kind of neat. And then you saw there, just disconnect that way if you wanted to disconnect yourself from CarPlay. So that's how you set up Apple devices inside of the Kia Carnival. Setting up Android devices is the exact same process. So you're going to go back home into your setup, device connections, and then we're in this main screen. You can add the device or you can delete. So I want to add in a new device.
From your device in order to search. On your device, select the name that matches vehicle name on the screen.
Just waiting for Carnival to show up. Perfect. Pins match up, so let's pair. There we go. And as you can see there, both phones are connected. And one cool thing is that you can select priority. So who's going to be connected to first, as there's multiple phones connected. But one even better thing is that you can have one phone set up for phone calls, one or two for audio. So you can kind of do a mix and match of all of these things. You can either set up for Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, but for any of these, you can do a nice mix and match there instead. You can go back home and launch into the phone and currently connected to the iPhone 14 Pro. So let's do a swap out to the Galaxy instead. There we go. Currently connected to the Galaxy instead, so the Android device, and you can swap back if you've got multiple phones connected. Now, similar to the iPhone side of things, Android devices...
Contacts download is starting. Some phones require additional confirmation.
Yeah, so that's going to say no in a second just because I selected no. But if you select yes because it's your car, then it's going to download your contacts and messages and things like that. And then, very similar to the Apple side of things, Android devices are USB on this specific screen for Android Auto. And again, you want to make sure that you're using a data cable in order to be able to connect, going through the data port down in the center stack. And you're just going to plug yourself in. And reading USB. Android Auto would like to set up. So we're going to hit next. Okay. Oh. There we go. Perfect. That's what I was waiting for. So you can see there, fully connected, which is great. And I mean, you saw there, so we're split screen now inside of this thing rather than a full screen, but you can go full screen by pushing map. And all of a sudden your map is full screen. But this is nice because it's full pinch to zoom capability on the Android side of things, and it's super responsive. You can search for addresses. You can press there in order to be able to do things like avoid certain things on your route. So motorways, toll roads, ferries, things like that. Back home, you can also mute out your guidance prompts. Which heading do you want to use? North, up, overview. You can zoom in and out that way as well. You can push the little home icon there to get to this little split screen, or push this to get to an icon view instead. But it's a very similar setup to the iPhone side of things. So you've got your current connection level, your battery percentage and the time, your map, podcasts, your phone, and then you've also got the Google Assistant, so you can push that way if you wanted to use your Google Assistant, but you could also do a press and hold on the steering wheel in order to be able to activate your Google Assistant that way instead. Pushing this button gives you to this little screen. You can use Waze through this device as well, which is amazing, but if you're using an Android device and Waze is not showing up, I put a video together explaining how to get it set up, and you can find that link down in the description of this video. But it's very straightforward. And then, so you can also customize this thing. And all you're going to do on your phone is search for Android Auto. And once Android Auto pops up, you're looking Android Auto settings, and you're going to connect through. You can look at previously connected cars, and you can customize the launcher. So let's say if you're not a fan of the layout here, all you're going to do is just press and hold, and you can drag around instead in order to create that perfect setup that you'd like. You can deselect certain apps if you want to. You can add them back in. As I mentioned, just do a press and hold in order to adjust. But it's not dynamic the same way that it was on the iPhone side of things. So any changes that you make here can be made, but what you have to do is actually disconnect from Android Auto first. Then you're going to launch back in, and let's launch back into Android Auto. And you can see there, boom. So all of the changes that we've made there are now set up perfectly right through the system here as well. You can push the Kia button in order to get back home. You saw there, Android Auto to launch back in instead. That's nice. Nice and simple. That's the basics of setting up an Android device inside of the Kia Carnival. It, as I mentioned, works the exact same way as the Apple side of things. From here, if you hop into Setup, Device Connections, and then Device Connections again, so you've got both phones that we've connected. As I mentioned, you can kind of do a mix and match, figure out which one gets connection priority by going this way if you want to. You can do a mix and match of who's going to be connected for the phone, for audio, all that fun stuff. Then you can also easily delete devices. You can select whichever ones you want deleted, delete, and there you go. Both phones are now deleted, so it's that simple setting up Android Auto, Apple CarPlay inside this vehicle.